Welcome. I'm David T. Phillips, CEO of Estate Planning Specialist, and your host each Wednesday for the podcast, Estate Planning Made Easy, which teaches you how to keep your wealth in the family. Well, this week I'd like to talk about a mistake that I see quite often. In fact, I deem it as mistake number 6. But it's just a mistake all over the place, so it's not just my mistake that I deem as number 6. But before I get into that, I want to tell you a story. So not too long ago, I was on a cruise, and the cruise was down through Central America. And just so happens that 2 of my clients, a husband and wife, were on the cruise. And after I finished my presentation, I went up to the wife and I said, well, how do you think I did? We were friends and clients for many, many years. And so I could talk to them like that and ask for their critique. And she says, David, we are clients of yours and we appreciate what you've done for us and our family. But frankly, I find your topic extremely morbid. And I paused for a second. I go, whoa. I'm a downer. I'm, Debbie Downer. I'm kind of like, and I got to thinking about it after she said that, she's actually correct. I mean, estate planning is planning your departure from this earth. And that's not a real pleasant thought. And as I get older, I start to think about that. And my real close friends pass away and maybe I could end up being last man standing or maybe not, I don't really know the time, the day, and the hour. And that's what estate planning is all about, is to prepare for that. But it is kind of a downer. And so I apologize for that to all you listeners. But I hope you understand that we can't take it with us. And so therefore we do have to have a logical plan. So let's get back to mistake number 6 that I call number 6. One of the problems inherent in life in and of itself is that perhaps we might live too long. That's a mistake. It's not preparing for longevity, or it's also called longevity risk. And I know you might think, well, he's made this up. This is something that David's making up. But in reality, if you think about it, the longer we live, the more likelihood the market's going to go down somewhere. It can't always go up. It's going to go down. So depending on where you are in the scale, how much you have, if your 401k becomes a 201k because of a market downturn, then that's a problem. And then you have to prepare for that. So you have to set some money aside in a guaranteed column so that no matter what happens, you have enough to live on. Another would be just loss of income. You ran out of money. You lived too long. I had it planned. From 0 to birth, right now, the life expectancy in the United States is age 73 for a male. So what if you go to 80? What if you go to 90? What if you go to 100? You become a centenarian. Are you going to have enough money? Do you have enough money stockpiled? Is Social Security going to be enough to ride you through? So that's kind of a problem. Longevity risk number 2 is loss of income. Then what about inflation or deflation? Somewhere along the line that's going to catch up with us. And this is going to be happening here, I believe, pretty soon. The longer you live, the more likelihood that there's going to be an increase in taxes. And right now we're at the lowest tax brackets we've been in 80 years. I don't see that persisting. But the number 1 longevity risk, surprisingly, is us having a long-term care event. That means that Medicare has run its course, its 100-day course, and we're in the hospital, say, or we have to rehab, or we have a stroke and we now go into an assisted living or a nursing home or just home. In fact, 80% of all care is rendered at home. So most likelihood you'll go home, and most likely you will be cared for by family members. So we got to think about this longevity risk, this number 1 longevity risk, which is a long-term care event, what impact that has on our family. So, and I think that we need to take longevity risk off the table in all regards, but especially this long-term care event. And there are ways in which we can plan for it. And the next episode, I will give you solutions. I'm just going to talk to you today about the problem, though, because I think that's the most important part of this, is for you to understand. And again, it's maybe the Debbie Downer, or the David Downer, I guess probably I should say, the David Downer of my job. But in reality, right now, if we are a male in the United States, there's a 60% chance, if I'm 65, that I will have a long-term care event before I pass away. If I'm a female, the chances are 80%. So think about that. That's the reason why when you go to a nursing home, who are the people that are in the nursing home? Well, it's mostly females, because they live longer than men, and 80% will have a long-term care event before they pass away. If we're married, we're 65 years old and we're married, there is a 90% chance that one of us will make it to age 90. I mean, that's significant. So there's a good chance that we're going to have a long-term care event. We may dodge it. And if we do, and everybody wants to dodge a long-term care event, but are we prepared for it? You think about the enormous cost that would be incurred if we do have a long-term care event. And that's, again, part of estate planning, because if we have to use our money for care, then we don't have as much to leave to our kids, to our family, to our posterity. And I see this time and time again in circles that I'm in, especially at church. And I see that the people that are in rehab, or they've had an event, they have to stay. They're forced to stay with their kids. They sell their home and they move in with their kids. In fact, there's a big influx right now in the country in new builds for multi-generational homes. You know, it's very common in Japan and in the Orient and in Europe, and a lot of European countries, to have multi-generational homes. That's not the case in the United States until now. So we're seeing a lot of these, primarily, I think, because COVID required that people have care, and then so they just said, well, let's move in together and let's share the expenses. But that's also, they do that to preserve their inheritance, because if they sent mom or dad into a nursing home, there goes the inheritance. So just think about that. And I'm not so much concerned about the finances is a big part of care. Think about, as I said earlier, 80% of all care is rendered by family members. What does that do to the family members when we are forced to be cared by them? Or, I mean, we could stay in their home, but wouldn't it be nice if we had the ability to have professional care come in and take care of us if we needed it, rather than require that our daughter quit her job to take care of us, or change their lifestyles, or never go on vacations? I mean, there's a lot of things. It's kind of a selfish thing on our part if we don't prepare for this. And I'm seeing time and time again that people are painting themselves into a corner. They have no place to go. And so they have to do this. They have to go in. And so, I think it's a kind of a selfish move on our part. And what did COVID teach us? COVID's taught us a lot. How soon we forget. Geez, I remember just here at the office, my wife and I were the only ones coming in. The staff was all working from their homes, and our office area is huge. It's basically a village is what it is. And there was no one in the streets. So I know that it wasn't a good time. But what did COVID teach us? I think the number one lesson that it taught us, and there's a lot that it taught us, but I think the number one lesson that it taught us was that we don't want to be in a nursing home. During the first year of COVID, 40% of all deaths were in a nursing home. So you don't want to be forced there. And, when you were in a nursing home, you weren't even allowed to have family members in the home with you, in the nursing home with you. So you basically, those that died without anybody near them. In fact, that kind of happened to my mom, although she was not in a nursing home, but she went to the hospital and we couldn't see her and she passed away. So, and those kinds of things, it just teaches us that we need to be prepared. So how do we do that? Well, there are long-term care plans available. I've written a report called The Leveraged Care Solutions. I'll have access to it in show notes for you, so you can go to the show notes and order a copy of Leveraged Care Solutions, Answers to Today's Long-Term Care Crisis. This particular approach to preparing for the inevitable for most of us it's a great report that lists out the new avant-garde options for care. Also, we have our newsletter, Generational Wealth Strategies, that I hope you are subscribing to it. It's once a month, comes out. It's published by Eagle, Salem Eagle. And this particular issue, the November issue, November of 23, I actually listed the best leveraged care solutions for you. And I will also have that in the show notes, both in this episode and next week's episode. So the best solutions for you, the best leveraged care solutions for you today. Long-term care, basically, long-term care planning, the new avant-garde leveraged care solution is basically what you do is you take an asset that you have today and you rotate it from your left pocket to your right pocket. It's still an asset on your balance sheet. You don't send it off. It's not a premium where you have to pay like your car insurance or your homeowner's insurance. You're just shifting it or repositioning it from one pocket to the other pocket. It's still an asset on your balance sheet. And it expands at a minimum of 3 times what you put in for care, if you need it for care. If you never need it for care, that asset is returned to either you or to your beneficiaries. If you decide to quit it, sometime you get money back. But let's forget that, because you're not going to do that. Once you have this in place, you're not going to. But if you never need it for care, if you dodge the long-term care bullet, the money that you put into it goes to your beneficiaries. So it's not an expenditure. It's not a use it or lose it proposition like old long-term care was. So you need to understand what that is. And I encourage you to read the Leveraged Care Solutions report that I wrote. Now, I want to just talk, we're about out of time here today, but I want to talk about Washington. The state of Washington decided this long-term care is a very, very serious thing. And we want to jump in and help. And we want to take care of the problem. And so 2 years ago, they decided they were going to create what's called the Washington CARES Act. And there's a couple of states that are following in suit. California is definitely one of them that's very interested in following this. And what they did was they said, okay, if you work in the workforce, even if you're over 65, you have to put in almost 1% of your pay into a long-term care pool that will be accessed by those people that are indigent, that don't have assets, that they don't have wealth. And their money will come from the state to take care of them. And so they did all this. They said, okay, on October of 2022, we're going to start this. And if you have a long-term care policy in place, you don't have to do this. So in the whole country of the United States, only 100,000 people bought a leveraged care solution in 2022. By October, when this deadline, 400,000 Washingtonians had purchased long-term care because they didn't want to have to pay the 1% tax on their income to pay for long-term care. So what does that show us? That shows us that people don't want government plans, first of all. And second of all, they understood what the plan offers. In Washington, it's the monthly care in a long-term care facility is $12,000 a month. Okay. That's $144,000 a year. The Washington CARES Act maximum benefit for the entire period that you are qualified is $37,000. I mean, a pittance. And so you have to pay this 1%. You really don't get any kind of a benefit. So I urge you to take control of the situation. Get your long-term care plan in place now, and don't make longevity a mistake. Longevity, the risk of longevity. Make sure that you set up guaranteed income for you, that you have the long-term care event, especially because it is the number one leveraged care plan in the country today. So this leveraged care solutions is the number one plan. I like this. Will be in the show notes too. This is a little graph that I have that will show you that you're basically just taking a little slice of what you have and putting it from your left pocket to your right pocket, and you're using it for your care. So this will also be in the show notes. Okay, so next week, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about the solution. So leverage care, I kind of given you a little idea of what it is, but next week, we're going to actually be talking about leverage care solutions and what they are, what they mean, what they're all about. And so look forward to seeing you next week. This is David T. Phillips, CEO of Estate Planning Specialist, signing off. Until next week, take care.